Beautiful. Print that. That was great.
That was the unofficial start?
Okay, we need some punctuation in that second one.
Take two. Hi everyone, it's your hosts, Mary Shea, and
Harish Mohan.
we've got really exciting news. We're launching the Revenue Innovators podcast this summer, where we'll talk with the greatest minds about revenue strategy and execution. We hope you'll be there for the big release.
But in the meantime, we've already started the conversation with a handful of experts about how they're thinking about revenue operations in the larger RevOps economy. Today, we're talking to Scott Brinker, Vice President Platform Ecosystems at Hubspot. We're talking about the journey from big data to big ops. We know you'll enjoy it. Also, don't forget to follow along for more interviews each week and get the latest updates on the Revenue Innovators podcast. You can find all of them on Sales Hacker's Revenue Ops channel. Now, let's get in the interview with Scott.
I'm delighted to be here with you. I have a really fun role at HubSpot, so it's my responsibility to help this ecosystem of all these other amazing MarTech companies and sales tech companies and all sorts of other kinds of SaaS companies be able to integrate into HubSpot, promote themselves to our customer base through the app marketplace, do all sorts of fun collaborations together. So yeah, for a fellow who's looked at the landscape of apps in the marketing world for so long, to have a chance to work with so many of those partners to help bring them into the HubSpot platform, love it. But I think it's that probably most companies don't even know what RevOps is at this point. I kind of feel like, there's a set of us who, follow these groups, in Twitter and kind of on the cutting edge of, MarTech and sales tech. And we've been talking about, RevOps like crazy, particularly this past year and a half. But I think, out in the broader marketing and sales world, this is still a pretty new concept. I think we've got our work cut out for us going from that early adopter stage to crossing the chasm with it. So I think from my perspective, first and foremost, it's a capability. It's what a company is able to actually put in place as the foundation, for how marketing, sales, customer service, and success are able to work together. I think in that regard, then, it's a bit of a philosophy of saying, okay, yes, we want to unify these. The customer journey is unified through the customer's perspective. We need to be able to match and support that, from the way our organization serves that customer. And then probably the next layer down is like, okay, well, it's obviously then a team and the people who really execute that and how they collaborate with their partners across marketing and sales and customer service. I also think RevOps is a culture. And I think that's, having been working in MarTech for so long and seen so many innovations, come into the field of marketing, one pattern that has repeated itself again and again and again is the actual technology and the actual, practices or tactics, they're really the easiest part. They are not the barriers. You can buy the technology, you can map out the processes. Where the challenge is really adapting your culture to be able to take full advantage of what those technologies and those processes have to offer. And so I definitely think that leaning into the continued evolution of the culture in your company to fully take advantage of RevOps as a unifying capability across marketing, sales, and customer success. That's going to be probably the most important thing you have to do. So at the end of the day, the customer does not distinguish between marketing, sales, customer service. They want to engage with the organization the way they want, when they want, for whatever particular ask they have. and to them, not only do they not care, about like, oh, well, is that the marketing team that's helping me or the sales team or the customer service? Like, it actually annoys them to have to try and figure out like, oh, okay, this company is structured this way, and I guess I need to talk to this person about this, and these people are emailing me this thing, but it's completely disconnected from what I just talked with this other person on the phone. I mean, customers just don't have patience for that. And there's been enough, particularly digital native businesses, over this past decade that have just gotten so good and so smooth at delivering these experiences that sort of hide the complexity of the organization from the customer experience, that people now expect that everywhere, and it's really raised the bar. And frankly, RevOps is the only way you get there from here. Yeah, it's a really exciting inflection point that we're at here. So big data has obviously been a theme for, oh my goodness, now probably 15 years, and super important thing is like, just the total volume of data that organizations were, collecting and generating and figuring how do we store this and how are we going to analyze it. I mean, this was a huge revolutionary shift, for digital business. But it was largely about, okay, this is all this data that we're collecting, it's coming in all these ways, generating this, and we'll put it way off in this big data lake, far away. And if you have a trained data scientist as your Sherpa, they can go up to the data lake and, help hunt for, giant bass in there. I think this metaphor is falling apart quickly. But what's happening now is, and this is where it gets so tied into ops, is that data isn't just sitting there in some faraway data lake purely for analytical purposes. It's actually now we're in a place for a digital business where we want the business to be able to react, in the moment to what this data is telling us. Data that's coming in from the customer service side, data that's coming in from our marketing campaigns. Like, we want to be able to stitch these things together to recognize, when patterns are happening with customers and be able to take action on them, very rapidly. And so what you see here is all this emergence of these different ops functions that are harnessing this data and helping the organization be able to respond to it much more quickly. In fact, now you've got so many different teams that are, either doing things with this data or, collecting new data to, associate it with it, that it's kind of a new challenge. It's like, okay, wait a second, it isn't just about big data. It is about big ops in the sense of all these different operations capabilities that are running on that data at the same time, in parallel. And again, this is when you start to picture like, oh, wow, okay, all these different people interacting with all this stuff at once, that could get a little chaotic. Yes, which is exactly why RevOps, is such an amazing function to develop, is because it can provide, that overarching framework and the guardrails and provide some coherence, to what we are doing with that data, at least across all of the customer-facing parts of the org. And so, yeah, I really do see RevOps. I see RevOps as like a real center of gravity for unifying all these different ops functions that are emerging on the customer side of the business. And I do see an interesting parallel where on more of the, technical side of the business, if you're a digital product, or, a heavy IT component, and how you're delivering your product or service, DevOps has really become a center of gravity for thinking about, okay, how do we manage this pipeline of the digital experiences that we're creating and deploying and making sure that they're performing well. And as it turns out, those things are generating a lot of data that feeds into the RevOps side of the function as well, too. And so I think if you get companies that have those centers of gravity of DevOps and RevOps, I mean, that is the future of what a digital business is all about. So there are two simultaneous answers to it. One is it already is. That if you think of the products that are really at the center of most customer-related business stacks today, tech stacks today, there's frankly a relatively small number of companies that are at that center, right? I mean, there's Salesforce, there's HubSpot, you companies, you might have Oracle or Adobe, Microsoft. I mean, you can probably count on two hands, like, okay, what are these center of gravities? And that's actually a very consolidated industry. Now, what's fascinating is because of that consolidation, that there is becoming this like common system of record, this tent pole, around which the rest of the stack then tends to be created, is you're just seeing this incredible amount of innovation of all these specialist apps, that are being created. I mean, we can just look at, over the past year of all the amazing things that have been created in the, virtual event, tech world. I mean, it's crazy. There's literally hundreds of companies now who are like innovating like mad on how do you create these amazing, event-like or, group meeting experiences. And so this is great because what we get is kind of the best of both worlds. When you've got all those, innovators out there in these broad ecosystems, but they integrate to those common set of platforms that really are at the heart of the stack, then you get the best of both worlds of, yes, I have a unified view of my customer, I have a, common system of record, but I can also pick the very best apps of, whatever new innovative trend or, particular capability is particularly relevant to my industry and plug it into that. I think it's amazing, right? Like, I mean, think of your iPhone. I mean, and, how many iPhone apps are there in the world? Like literally millions, but the iPhone and Android are highly consolidated as platforms. And so we're not quite there yet in the MarTech sales tech world of just two platforms and millions of apps around them, but that's kind of the direction the industry seems to be headed. I think nirvana for RevOps is we are just really good at delivering on the promise to the customer of a coherent, consistent experience across their entire life cycle with our business. Like that's first and foremost. We will be at nirvana when we are just like really, really good across all industries on being able to live up to that promise. And I think the second thing, which is related to that, is don't get me wrong, I love the fact that we're in that early adopter stage and we're all working together to cross the chasm and make this a more universal way for modern businesses to operate. And so I think we will know we have achieved a certain nirvana when this just becomes a natural part of how businesses operate. But to them, not having a RevOps capability would be like not having an accounting department. HubSpot has always been focused on how do we help our customers give their customers the best experience online. And I think what we're seeing now is this evolution of how do you deliver a really amazing digital experience to your customers. It's advanced quite a bit over the past 10 years. And this is why we need this RevOps capability to be able to pull all these different digital touch points together into a much more coherent, experience delivery. And just from the product side, what we're doing, on our marketing, it's our own RevOps capabilities internally. We are definitely all in on RevOps. You want to get good at RevOps before your competitors do. This is what we see in so much of the digital landscape. I mean, it's wonderful, the pace of innovation that's happening in the world today around digital business. It's such an exciting time to be able to be a professional where you're able to contribute to this, you're able to find opportunities, do things that are pioneering new ground. But yeah, the flip side of that is if you're not leaning into that, and your competitors are, yeah, man, wow, you can, the speed at which this stuff is moving is you can really fall behind quickly. So I would I would highly encourage all listeners to lean into where this RevOps movement is going, because this is clearly the future of what digital business is all about.